Okay, this is Heather Tice. We're gonna start the Public Transit Advisory Committee meeting. It is February 10th, 2020, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll go around the room and introduce everyone. So, I'm Heather Tice.
I'm Natalie Wilson.
Mike Wazkowski, nice to meet you all. We'll see you again.
Bill Wilson.
Janelle Amin.
Elwin Ackland.
Terry Reinheimer.
Jessica Moringer, and for those of you who maybe don't know, I'm the interim transit manager.
Lance Ray.
And Nick Kuzmiak.
Serena Pearson, Lance Transit.
Hi there.
Hi.
Welcome. We're doing introductions.
Dustin Smith with the city MSO engineering.
Welcome, Dustin. We'll start the meeting with public comment. Is there any public comment that you'd like to report? Anyone? No one saying anything about that? We'll move on to C, approval of minutes. We need to review the minutes for September 9th. There's a draft. Has everyone had a chance to look at them? We'll give everybody
I
a
brought
moment.
copies if anybody needs a
We'll
copy
give
of
them a
it.
moment to,
For the 9th?
For the 9th of September.
9th of
Yeah,
September.
that's the one you have right
Yeah,
there.
the meeting in November did not have a quorum, so it wasn't official.
Just-
Yeah, we didn't have a quorum last time.
we'll just give everybody a minute to look them over. All right. Has everybody had a chance to look at them? I'd like to ask for an motion.
Hello.
Hi.
Are you here for the public transit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Kathy. Hi.
Join us.
Where are we gonna go?
Where's the sign machine?
I'll make a motion
we
to
started?
approve the minutes.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you very much. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We will approve the minutes as written.
And I abstain from that.
That's fine. Thank you so much. All right. Motion is approved. D is agenda items. But before we do that, would you like to introduce yourself?
Did we
Kathy?
miss public comment? That's what we.
Oh, yeah, we can absolutely go back, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Because that's before I became.
Okay.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah.
Kathy Law, I represent the South Advocates Coalition of Kansas. I'm the lady liaison for them. We advocate for people's rights with disabilities.
And I'm Jacqueline Anderson, also with SAC.
Welcome.
Do you want to talk about what, should she go
Yes,
ahead?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, I'm here to testify for myself and also for others because we feel I do get services through the parent transit, but there's lots of times I cannot get a ride because there's organizations that get more privileges over than people that live in the community. And I can't get a ride lots of times. And I have to be turned away. And if I take public transportation, it's like to work or back home.
The problem Kathy and some of our other advocates find is that because some area providers are allowed to submit basically a laundry list of people they serve and people that need rides, it's not equitable because people that are not involved with a provider don't get to have somebody help them set up their rides. The fact that those providers get a special option over people that aren't involved with the provider means that these folks that work, another self-advocate we have works at KU, they both get off about 4 o'clock. That's when the providers release too. So they take all the vans, and then we have folks who work in the community that can't get home. It does not feel equitable to us, and that's why we're here today. Not that we don't think other people should have rides, we obviously want all of our
But we
friends.
feel like it should be fair.
Any other thing you wanted to add?
I just wanted to stress how important it is.
Okay, I guess that's all we're here to say, and Kathy has applied for the board, so hopefully she can come bring a voice to people that are independent and have disabilities and some of their transportation challenges here in Lawrence.
Well, thank you very much for your input.
Can you please provide us, make sure you sign in too, so we have your contact information so we can investigate this issue and make sure that we follow up with you.
I appreciate that, thank you. You're here.
Okay, so, oh yeah, she's got the sign-in sheet. Do you need an agenda?
No, I got one. She
Okay,
got you that.
Okay, super. Okay, so should we move on to
Yeah, I would say
agenda
that's an
items?
issue, just we need to investigate with
Yeah.
our provider to ensure
Yeah.
that we can
Yeah, we'll totally investigate
get that addressed.
We would appreciate it.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So number one, for agenda items is service change in public meetings, discussion item.
Okay.
Jessica?
So, I want to share with you a few concepts we have that are things that have been brought to my attention as we begin this conversation around service changes and a public meeting process for next year. One of the things in taking this interim role, I didn't anticipate having to have this conversation with you. I figured we'd have a new manager by now, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But in the meantime, there's some things I know that are going to impact some of the routes next year that we're going to be looking at drafting to propose some changes, mainly because of the physical environment of the street is changing, and so that will impact service. And then I'd welcome a conversation if you have any thoughts or ideas you want us to explore before we draft some official changes and bring back to you in March for your entertainment. So this is kind of a starting of that process. Might be a little bit different than what Bob has done in the past for service changes. The first thing I was going to show you is what KDOT has presented to the Multimodal Transportation Commission. This is a photo.
That's the K10, right?
This is K10, this is Wakarusa, and this is 27th Street. They are going to be making this a one-way, so you will only be able to proceed to the north from 27th Street onto Wakarusa. And there will be no turning movements there. And likewise, if you're proceeding south on Wakarusa and you intend to stay around the curve to 27th Street, you will no longer be able to do that. You will be a forced right-hand turn onto K10. Therefore, that'll impact probably route service for 9 and 29 and how we operate through that corridor and continue to provide service to the apartments that are just to the east of this location. And so that is one consideration we will be looking at. Another is on Route 7 related, and I didn't pull up a diagram for this, but related to the 21st Street Bike Boulevard implementation. With that implementation, the changes at 21st and Louisiana, and the connecting changes at 19th and Louisiana will allow us, will allow us to then travel back through 19th and Louisiana, where we previously haven't been able to since they made changes at that intersection. And so we will we will put traffic back both ways on 19th and Louisiana, or 19th, yeah, and Louisiana, which will allow us to provide two-way service in there. So we'll take out the loop that has been jogging over down 21st Street in Kentucky in those neighborhood streets and get it back on some collector level streets. Here's the improvement that's happening at Louisiana related to that Bicycle Boulevard, where there'll be no longer through traffic at this intersection. And so you can straight through if you're on Louisiana, and we'll continue to do that and provide service instead of turning on to 21st Street once the intersection of 19th and Louisiana is changed to allow us to make right-hand turns at this intersection. So those are a couple. We've also had a request to consider some extra stops on Overland Drive, and some consideration to change the path of the stop at the end of the access and related to Rock Chalk Park with the opening of the new medical facility out there, depending on how we stop and what that looks like. So those are the things on my radar, from things that we're aware of in the built environment and other considerations. But I would open to a conversation if somebody has a suggestion, if there's additional stuff you want us to explore in the interim as we propose what we're going to recommend as staff to propose to the public for a March meeting.
Could you go back to the map of the 19th Street? I wasn't quite following that one.
Yeah, this is 19th Street, this one.
The intersection at.
Oh, 21st and Louisiana.
That must be the one.
Okay, yes. So currently, we operate on Louisiana, we turn on 21st Street and then go up Kentucky because we can't make the right-hand turn at 19th and
Okay.
Louisiana.
That makes sense.
So once this is done, in order to do this, we also need to be able to turn at 19th and Louisiana, and that improvement's gonna be made as part of the Bike Boulevard project.
Okay.
And so all it is paint and restriping lanes, so instead of having a dedicated right turn lane here, with a really narrow turn radius, or sharp turn radius, where they fit that lane in, and then these lanes will be reallocated to move over, a bus will be able to turn this movement, where we currently cannot turn that movement, so.
And can you go back to the K-10 bypass and walk roads?
Yes.
So you're doing the same thing as far as the walk ped and the green?
Yeah, so this wasn't green paint, this is just how they are showing a shared use path here.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's already there, right? All the.
have they gone, I haven't been out there to see if they've built it. They haven't, actually, I don't think they've let this project yet. They told me early summer construction.
Okay.
Is that right? So some of this is already here. This part right here is the existing shared use path. But as they make this a right-hand turn lane, they're to increase safety, they're moving this crossing back further
that's
some the turning
super
movement.
good, yeah.
And then these will just be extra shoulders to increase the roadway pavement, to facilitate some of those turning movements.
And they're making a one-way out of 27th Street.
So yes, if you're,
So approaching Wakarusa from the east, am I correct?
yes,
Okay, I'm just making sure I understand.
yeah.
So you mentioned about the request for new stops on. How is that process, who makes requests and how is that looked at and how is it considered in terms of the operational analysis and all that was done?
So, I can't speak to historically how that's been done. How I envision that process looking up to this point is I had a folder of all of the things that I knew would need to be considered that I anticipated either handing off or having as we begin the conversation around route changes. The existing theory around that is really that the investment in service really wouldn't be a lot of significant route changes with the pending installation and construction of a new transit center, because that's going to require a whole renegotiation of the entire system. And so I know Bob Nugent's theory had been that we make some tweaking changes to service and not make wholesale changes to a lot of service until we get to that point. So that's kind
Transit
of
hub, yeah.
to the transit hub construction, and we get to those reroutes, because we're going to have to go through a pretty robust process of basically a new COA before we open that that transit center for service. And so that's kind of had been the theory. So I had just saved any requests or conversations about changes to fixed route service in a folder since I have been in this interim position since September, and those are kind of the things that I had on my radar. I think we can continue to look through. We have, and part of our conversation in coordination with KU, and I have asked them to help me document, because there have been things that have been implemented out of the COA. Because if you start to read the COA, you're like, well, that doesn't make sense even to the map, and you can tell really quickly that there have been things to be implemented. And so I've asked them to help me go through that and identify out of all of the route recommendations, which ones have been implemented. Some of them are gonna be some of them show up in this request. So like at the Route 7 request that we just talked about, that was something that was recommended in the COA related to Route 7. So
That was talked about last year.
Yeah.
Regarding that, so that's.
yeah, and I think some of those things are things, the Rock Chalk Park, there's a kind of similar comment about that, about moving that service from the previous route it was on to Route 6, so it had more downtown connection. That had been something that had already been implemented. So I think we'll find those opportunities, if we can, to do those things, but we also, in terms of staff capacity, don't have the capacity or technical ability to do really large wholesale things, I think, without another operations analysis prior to the transit center.
So there was a COA done in 18,
Yes, I
knowing
think
that there was
so,
gonna be
18,
a
16.
whole new rework?
16, as of August 16, so there was one.
16.
16, yeah. So, and those are typical about every 5 years, so by the time we're
But
looking
nothing
at.
was implemented from it though?
No, things were implemented
okay.
from it, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I could operationally go through it and look
Yeah.
through, but I would have to rely on
Sure.
some other people's
Yeah.
knowledge to be able
No,
to
I just thought
pinpoint
it
which
just had been
things.
received middle of
Recently.
last year or whatever,
Oh, no, we've had it.
and nothing implemented from it.
No,
Okay.
yeah, there have, and once I can share that, I've asked, we pulled out all the recommendations basically and started looking at stuff to see like many of, I would say, maybe a third to half, or at least have been talked about and either done or not done, based on that. So some of the things, the recommendations they make, remember, these are consultants coming in and looking at a pure system analysis based on efficiency of your system. Well, there are reasons why we have routes for coverage that are not based on efficiency of our system. So there are some recommendations they have about changing or removing service that we're politically not in the place, that our community hasn't been in the place to make, because we want to have service to certain locations because of the value, the intrinsic value that has for opportunities to access in our community. And so our community has taken that sort of approach that's a balance between coverage and efficiency, as we've allocated resources.
That makes sense.
And I think that will, I think another opportunity to have that conversation will be had when we explore how the new transit center allows us to make all of our routes a lot more efficient, because we're coming to a destination that is very close to a central location in our city for center of population, but also for the largest destination in our community. And so I think some of the recommendations about even interlining routes, where you have city and KU services, now that we're coming to a more central location, there is going to be more opportunity for some of those partnerships and coordination.
Do you have any more information on what is being recommended for Route 6 near Rock Chalk, or is that still kind of in the discussion?
So I think that's going to be in the discussion phase. I think part of it's to see what we feel is appropriate out there in terms of providing access, in terms of pedestrian stuff. So I need to go out and make a site visit, but I also want to talk to our contractor about what we think is realistic. Do you have some thoughts about that?
I would just like to be in the information loop on that, because I get a lot of feedback on the 6 route.
Okay.
Just-
That's part of the 6 route, or just in general?
That part has come up. The 6 route in general, I get a lot of feedback on, but that part of the route has been brought up consistently, so.
Can you share any of the thoughts people have about
Long
that?
story short,
Okay.
it has to do with ridership on the bus and where ridership is going, connectivity, so you got Lawrence High, and then you got Walmart, and you come all the way out here to Rock Chalk Park. There's a fluctuation in when there's ridership, when there's not, when there's events, there's a lot of, I've heard a lot of drivers and radio talk about not being able to get through at certain times, or it seems like there's a lot of things in that part of that route that could be worked with. And that's just a real consistent thing I get from feedback, just various different things about that route.
Yeah.
And so as that is being considered, I would like to be on the,
Okay.
at least be able to hear the information that's being discussed and then.
So my thought on that process, and those are some of the same things we've heard about service in terms of accessing the roadways through that parking lot network when there's a lot of traffic at Rock Chalk Park in terms of traffic flow. And one of the conversations I think we're looking at is if you don't go into their loop, but you keep it out, in terms of, now you also need a stop closer maybe to the medical facility that's out there. And so I think we'll be talking with our operator, because that's one of the things, if we can prevent delay, then that's one of the things that's advantageous to the route.
And did they, I know that, a couple of years ago, one of the things we did was we changed the route of the 3, and that was kind of, curious if that has come up again.
I haven't heard anything about that.
Then I won't
Okay.
open a can of worms on that.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion on service change? All right, let's move on to Transit Center, Transit Hub.
Yes. All right, so I've been heard there's an update. There is a pending memorandum of understanding between the university and the city that is supposed to go to the city commission in late February. This memorandum of understanding lays out a relationship that gives the city permission to explore and study access onto a site that is kind of bounded in around that current maintenance facility and a little bit bigger. Basically, that will prepare all both the city and KU to enter into a land agreement, so it'll further define a footprint. So they've said, here's the area we're agreeing to talk about, and then that will allow us to begin to spend some money in studying, doing a traffic analysis and doing a site study to determine what that looks like. I imagine the site layout is going to be very contingent on what's determined is needed in terms of transportation, site access, a new signal versus the existing signal, and some of those things. So we're looking forward to seeing that on the city commission agenda later in February.
Okay, that's exciting.
Yeah. Has KU signed the agreement yet, or are we supposed to go first?
I don't know who is signing it first. Brandon McGuire is managing that agreement out of his office. But I saw an email that said they have agreed to it, so I don't know what that means in terms of who signs first.
All right, so, any other discussion on Transit Hub? We'll move on to bus stop amenities update.
Okay. So, in my term as interim, we've accepted, the city commission has a $10,000 donation from Velocity, and we are working to put together some cost estimates to understand how far that will go in terms of concrete to be poured, in terms of amenities. I'm looking at, some sites for that, for places where we wouldn't necessarily have done that weren't on the list that Bob had already begun. I believe he had probably previously reported to you that he was working on some amenities rollout. So there's about 24 locations remaining that they've kind of narrowed down on his list for amenities. So we are beginning that process of doing some additional site design and costing for those amenities and sites. But in working in context with the Velocity stuff, we are also working in partnership with the 9th Street Art Project. They have proposed 2 art benches on 11th Street, and so we are exploring what concrete is needed there and costing some of those out. So we have a bunch of amenity things in the works. The Velocity and the 9th Street corridor projects have tighter timelines to turn around and deliver on some of those, and so we are planning to do some of that work in-house. Gary's here, and he's the engineer that gets to help us facilitate some of that process work, and then continue with the additional 24 stops and some of the amenities at some of those. So
That's great.
we are making progress. It is slow, but it's too cold to pour concrete right now anyway. So hopefully we'll have some stuff done and we can deliver on some of those this spring.
That's great. Any other discussion on amenities?
I don't know if it's in part of that or not, but has there been any further follow-up or discussion in terms of the shelters and stuff, the facilities that are already in place, the vandalism taking place?
So we've gotten law enforcement involved in a few situations with the vandalism that had been in place. Bob had previously reported on. We've had less graffiti vandalism, that's in terms of paint and such recently, but more with cooking spray. And so,
Like him?
yes, because it's intensive to clean off. We believe it's a targeted attack on our consultant who does the cleaning work because it's cleanable. But other than that, we haven't had as many issues, at least that have been reported to me in this interim, so maybe that's good news, but we've been engaging with law enforcement around that,
Okay.
so.
Because it'd just be a little concerning to put good money after bad, creating
Yeah.
more targets, and if it can't be kind of dealt with before we invest a lot.
Yeah, I do think one of the considerations that I've discovered, I think with amenities is that a new manager, it's kind of on my list to hand to a new manager, is that we probably need to explore what additional amenity types look like instead of just glass box shelters. In terms of the cost to replace that glass is pretty extensive when we do have to do it, and then we have to remove the amenity. You know, there's a lot of things around the glass box and why it may or may not be attractive, and so I think we might need to explore a wider variety of design options for transit amenities that includes more than just our current shelter design. So I would imagine that being part of the process that we need to go through as we continue to roll out amenities. And I imagine this amenities rollout was a little more conservative again because we're trying to really place built environment improvements in places where we know we can
That the service
pretty
is
much
gonna be
assure
there.
there's gonna be service in many of these places.
Because once the transit hub is established, then it's gonna change routes. But we know that there are places that will still wanna have service, no matter how it's designed.
And it might be you still have it at that intersection, but instead of going east-west, it goes north-south. And so some of those considerations, I think, were the reason why we've had a long delay in investing in physical infrastructure is you don't want to pour a lot of concrete if that's not where you're going to be in terms of service. So we want to be really thoughtful about that also. And it's probably good that we've taken that time and done that analysis. One of the stops on this that was on the list that we're like, oh, well, we don't need that now is on Wakarusa, and where we're not going to be able to have service on the west side of the street. So
Right.
we just need to be thoughtful about some of those things as we roll out investments.
Any other discussion?
When you said the timelines are tighter, did the donation from Velocity have a?
It does not have a timeline, but I think it's just fiscally and prudently responsibility for us to deliver on that in a good faith effort to spend the money for what it's been spent for and to be able to account and track for that. And I think that's the expectation that has been set by our city commission. And so we've kind of prioritized them in that way, in the sense that because there is either outside agencies or outside funding involved in those projects, we feel like it's our due diligence to prioritize those in terms of rolling them out to get to see a delivery on those projects.
Okay. So moving on to item 4, transit manager hiring update.
All right. I've been told a contingent offer has been made and accepted for a new transit manager, and they're completing the official hiring process. Contingent on all of that, we should hear very soon, and they should be making some public announcements. And the anticipated late March start date. So you'll see me again in March, and then we'll have a new manager after that, starting in late March. So I'm excited about that opportunity to work with a new manager to continue to see some of the implementation of stuff I've been working on. So
It's very exciting.
yes,
And you can go back to your other job.
yes, that would be nice also.
Full-time.
Yes.
Excellent. Any discussion on the transit manager before we move on?
And remember, Heather served as your representative on a
did.
stakeholder interview committee, so without revealing any confidential details,
I
it
did
was.
get to meet both candidates, and it was a very good process, so I appreciate being a part of that.
During that process, did you ask what they view the role of the Public Transit Advisory Committee? Was that part of the discussion in the interviews?
Well,
They
it
didn't.
was a bigger picture, I think.
I overheard some conversation and discussion and questions about just engagement of constituents and stakeholders and understanding community and rider concerns and perspectives and how to integrate that into like your transportation system delivery, but not specific to PTAC that I specifically recall. But
Yeah,
there were some overarching themes that led to the conversation about how we make decisions and, you know, whose decision and how do we weigh all of these competing community values.
And I think there was a little discussion with both candidates about having that communication with the city and the riders and the advisory. It wasn't maybe specifically that, but it was more of a big broad picture of these are entities that you will need to be working with to make the best decisions and get that information. That makes sense?
Yeah. And I think probably every manager is going to have a different approach to how they want to give voice and use the advisory committee that advises over their topic to the city commission, so.
I'm assuming in places they are at, there's boards versus advisory, and that would be a real important thing to the manager to know who he reports to and oversees.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll get a big printout of all the different entities that are involved in decision-making and such.
Yeah. But I would say it's completely appropriate to have that conversation with them too. And we can set that tone and culture that you would like to have that. I mean, I know you typically have a study session, so an annual kind of work meeting where you do more dive into the weeds and do some work. And I'd imagine that once that person has time to catch up, that's something they're going to be very interested in doing with you all.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Quick updates for marketing and communication.
Okay, well, pretty quick. We just have a couple things we're doing. Tomorrow evening, I'll be at the library from 3 to 5:30 for their community resource drop-in that they are having. They have this is something that they have just started doing, and we'll be out there this week and next week, or I will. So it's just generally questions about food assistance, housing program, job searches, and other services, and transportation. So we'll be giving out information on transit at the library, and that'll be in, I believe it's in meeting room A, so it'll be downstairs. So if anybody wants to stop by either tomorrow night or next Tuesday night, come see us, and it'll be good to have some people come by and see all the different resources that are out there for Lawrence. We also have the LAPA. It's Lawrence Area Partners in Aging Senior Resource Fair is going to be at the Rock Chalk Park. That's going to be in beginning of March. So that's always a big event for seniors. And then the KU Wellness Fair and the Resource Expo is coming up as well. So just going to get out in the community and do some events and meet with some people. And however we can meet with some groups and do some presentations, we're always up for that. So if you guys know of anybody that's interested in learning about transit that would like to have somebody come out and speak to anybody that you know, if there's a group of people, if there's a staff meeting or whatever, we'd be happy to do that, so. And then there's Transit Day at the Capitol, which was canceled.
But it's been rescheduled. I think it's March 10, 2020. Yes. When I
When
looked
is
at
it?
it, March
March
10th.
10th.
Oh, it's the
2020.
same day as the
Yeah.
senior resource fair.
We aren't planning a real heavy investment this year in participating, mainly because of staff resources, so.
Yeah.
But that's a really great event where transit providers around the state bring vehicles or staff tables to talk to our legislatures about the investment in transportation and public transportation and how important it is, so.
And KDOT has a lot
Yes.
of coffee and donuts, so.
They canceled the last one because of the Chiefs game,
Yeah.
right? Or the Chiefs parade?
The parade, yeah,
The
the parade, yeah.
They canceled it because of the parade, so.
Yeah.
So is this more work in the lobbying, or is it
Well,
for
it's.
grants or for
It kind of is.
whatever?
It's kind of more of educational, so you're not officially lobbying, but you're sharing information about the services that are provided in the state as a way to educate legislators about the significance of the fiscal investment in public transit.
But we go early in the morning and try and catch them so that, we can just talk
Visit.
about transit and get a, kind of
And
plant
they
a
do
seed
come
a
down
little
for
bit.
donuts.
And we give them coffee and donuts, yeah.
So who's organizing this?
KPTA.
The Kansas Public Transit
Okay.
Association.
And then just tour around to the different reps' offices, or?
No,
they-
we set
Kinda
up
stay
an
in the middle,
event in the
Let them
lobby
come down.
and they come down.
Stuff to hand out.
They have stuff to hand
Yeah,
out.
hand out.
All the transit agencies from around the state all have tables set up. And then they have some speakers that come and talk about.
And
things.
providers are gonna have, and the presence is, having the buses around the Capitol and, so it feels a little more transit centered because there's buses and vehicles all,
Yeah, so then
all
they can
around.
go out and tour the buses and
Yeah.
see what different cities' buses look like. So we had brought,
it's transit
we
positive.
brought one of our
It's-
hybrid buses out there a couple years ago.
It's pretty
People get excited
significant
about
because
that.
many people represent counties that there isn't mass or public transit in. And so I think to see what those investments look like in terms of the capital operations, but also the operations and the operation dollars, is significant for the state, for people to understand what that looks like.
Okay.
And so is somebody gonna be able to go this year
I
or
kind of
not?
doubt it.
We're probably not gonna
We're a little
participate this year.
short-staffed.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that's appropriate or, some of us have more time.
You want to go?
Well, I don't know,
Yeah.
is that a role for PTAC? Is that, because I just happen to be a big advocate for a number of things, like languages and so on. And I know that legislators, if they are giving money to entities to spend, they want to know that it's spent well, and seeing is believing. So, having being there.
Is First Transit gonna have a bus there?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So I think.
It's really, in terms of priorities,
Yeah,
when we
no, I
looked at
understand.
system stuff, it wasn't, we wanted to make you aware it's happening. I think you can feel free to attend if there's something you want, like talking points from us about ridership or
Or
other stuff,
literature.
or literature, we can provide that. I don't know that's a role that PTAC's previously taken, but I think you could decide to appoint some among yourselves to represent you and participate.
think
I don't
that's
know how many
a
other-
really nice offer for you to go and participate in it.
You can maybe,
It's a beautiful place.
Oh, it is.
I love sitting in it.
It is, it's gorgeous.
well, I would love that. I am not able to go, and I am on a couple other committees that I've been invited to go. But I'm not able,
Well, I
Very
just,
busy that day.
and is it an all-day thing? Is it?
No, it's in the morning.
It's
Morning.
early in the morning. It starts at like 7:30 and it goes till probably like, I can't remember, like 10,
10:30?
11 maybe?
10:30,
I don't
11.
know.
Something like
never
that. I know I'm gonna be busy that day. I won't
Well,
be
if
able
I
to,
had
and
a
then Emily's on
stack of-
vacation. But we could give you some transit guides and some
Stack
little
of transit
tchotchkes you can hand out.
Yeah,
If you
and
want.
a table drape thing to,
Sure.
make a banner.
Yeah,
I could do that for the morning. I couldn't do it in the afternoon, but I
let
that's
us
great.
find out the details and make sure we can we don't want to just send you without a table, but to tell them, because I think we told them we weren't coming, but to
Oh,
make sure
right.
we can
Yeah,
tell
they
them we're
probably
coming.
Yeah.
Well, because they had to reschedule, so maybe that's.
I think they're
Yeah, they were still, they always want.
excited to have interest, so that would be great. Anyone else interested?
Is that something that we need to make a motion on, or is that just sort of a, hey, this is a good idea, let's see if we can make it work?
I think it's just Phyllis volunteered and everyone's
Yeah.
kind of in
Okay.
agreement of that. It doesn't need to be that
Sounds
formal.
good to me. I can't make it there, but I think if she could do that, I think it's a great idea to go ahead and have some sort of a presence there.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Yeah, it might be nice to have someone that is in a different role.
And you can report back to us and let us know.
I can certainly do that. I'll keep
You can
tabs
tell
on
us
the
how
donuts.
good the donuts are.
No, I'm glad to do it.
Great.
I have one other thing I was gonna show you.
Okay.
Our new buses are here. I tried to open this. I
Wish wrote
can't,
in one of them.
oh, it's gonna
Oh,
open
it's
now.
working now.
So our three 30-foot, these are just conventional diesel buses from Gillig, have arrived. We're in the process, I get to go out and meet the inspector for them tomorrow and negotiate everything else. And then hopefully we'll be getting them titled soon, and so they can get out on the road to operate to replace some of our other 30-foot vehicles. But they look just like all of our most recent kind of vehicle purchase, the blue with the green and yellow stripe down the side.
So I think it's a KU bus. I rode a brand new KU bus not too long ago.
Yeah, they smell like, almost like
Yeah,
a new car, almost.
They have new car smell.
Yeah, they have new car smell. So, anyway, that's what it looks like.
Are we gonna be retiring some of the light blue buses, do you know?
We're working on a whole fleet plan, so. My other announcement, and what you'll hear from me in a little more in March, is we are pursuing an opportunity to apply for a federal grant for low and no emissions vehicles, probably as a pilot in coordination with KU. So we're underway of developing what that looks like in terms of scope of work, and the deadline for that is March 17th. And so you will hear from me in March about that in more detail, because more than that I don't have at this time, so.
That's very exciting.
Yeah, what kinds of vehicles qualify for low or no emissions?
Good question. Part of the analysis of what you have to do for the application is to show the emission output of the comparison of the fleet that you're pursuing versus the fleet you're replacing, and so that's gonna be part of our conversation.
Okay,
We're looking at battery electric vehicles, so.
sounds good to me.
Does something like renewable natural gas come into place? Because though itself it does have emissions, it displaces the use of fossil natural gas. Is that the kind of thing that is in scope in the grant, or no?
I don't know.
Because CNG is pretty popular in other spots, and RNG can become CNG in comparison, so
Right.
just out of curiosity.
It's not the conversation we've had specifically locally in relation to the
Yeah,
opportunities of
I'm not
this
sure about
grant,
that
so.
Grant, if that grant includes other.
Our hybrids, I inquired a little bit too, because there's some concern just nationally of people being able to deliver, like Proterra, like Wichita got Proterras, but they're not actually operating, they can't get them out on the street yet, so there's a little bit of risk in the sense when you have fleet needs to replace with some of these riskier, vehicles that haven't proven their useful life, for FTA requirements and stuff. So we've kind of explored some of that realm and seeing, what does that mean for us? And that'll be probably part of our consideration when we look at choosing an opportunity. But it's an 85-15 match for vehicles and a 90-10 for equipment, like the charging stations. So it's a pretty nice federal investment, but you're looking at, with many of these different types of vehicle fleets, over double the cost of a conventional vehicle. So these buses are about $430,000 each, and you're looking from 800 to 1.1 million for many of per bus.
Yeah, the
And then-
cost of batteries on an electric vehicle is still
High.
pretty exorbitant.
Yeah.
On the other hand, my personal experience will tell you, charging up with electricity is a lot more cost effective than refilling it with gas or putting in a CNG station and refilling it with that. My personal cost for electricity now is about a third of what my fuel was. And I would bet that's even more so because these vehicles are constantly moving, so they need all kinds of fuel or electricity if you get a battery electric vehicle. And that would definitely save on the long run, even though if you have a lot of expense up front, yeah, it sucks, but the lifetime cost isn't necessarily much different, in my perspective.
Do they have regenerative braking?
All electric vehicles do.
Okay.
You basically just run the electric motor in reverse.
Right.
What's the grant called again, and through who?
It's in Federal Transit Administration, FTA, and it's low and no emissions. It's called
Okay.
LOW, LOWNO is their slang for it, the low-no grant.
Does CNG qualify for that?
I don't know.
Because that may be a great
Maybe.
opportunity to co-op with the city on their utility, with other utilities, public service
Yeah.
vehicles, to really gain some
Particularly with our coordinated service and our coordinated fueling and all the agreement at this site in terms of fueling on site and some of that consideration, KU is also interested in battery electric, and so that's kind of why we were talking in that direction around vehicles. They had done about, in the last decade, obviously technologies have changed a lot. They explored alternative energy source vehicles and did a study of kind of their recommendation. And so they were kind of, I think at that point in time, they had kind of knocked CNG off the list, but I know there's changing technologies. So we've also had a conversation about probably the need to re-engage that study and re-explore some of that. I'm not sure how much time we'll have to do some of that before we kind of
Have to get
explore
that grant done.
work completing a grant. But we're working on that, so.
Refueling is a huge issue. I don't know all the details, but. how
With
do you-
CNG?
Right.
Yeah, because you can't do the same exact tanks that you have in the ground for
Yeah, you have to get
oil. You have to have a
all
completely
new
different
stuff.
one set up because you can't contaminate the fuel you use.
There's a lot of opportunities with CNG with selling in terms of revenue opportunities to other municipalities to consider.
Once you have that.
Yeah. I don't know if I was getting, if I can go back real quick to marketing, has there ever been any effort or thoughts to advertising on the buses for revenue?
Yes.
We have not, yeah, people
talked about
bring it
it.
up, but I think the city's pretty much decided that they did not want to do that.
They don't want the revenue from that, or?
Just
Juice
didn't-
isn't worth the squeeze, I think is
I
what
don't
they
know
said.
really the
It's not
thinking
worth the
behind
effort
it,
to
but-
try and
We weren't
get
allowed
in
to,
the little
for some
amount of
reason.
money
Yeah, I
for
think
the
there might be
intrusion
It's a
of
federal
getting
thing,
ads on.
because of where we get our money or whatever.
No,
I think there are other federal systems that advertise.
No, there absolutely
Yeah.
Yeah, a
are.
lot of cities
But-
do advertise. I think maybe it was, I don't know. It's the size of the system, how much we could generate in advertising dollars. It just didn't seem like it was worth it. We're not a big enough system to really generate a lot of revenue, so.
I know the city's re-explored some of these conversations in relationship to parks and recreation facilities and naming rights and some of that. And so I think we'll continue to follow those conversations. If the policies around many of those types of things change, I think there could be opportunities to explore that as a funding revenue stream, but we'll have to evaluate
Okay.
some of that. Currently, we advertise on the vehicles for our own operational things on the interior and bus rails, and KU has a policy, if you're related to a student group, that they have a rate you can purchase, basically ad sales for campus-related things as part of the thing to roll out in their fleet.
Okay. I came from a setting that was similar in population, university town, and everything, where made $300,000 to $400,000 in additional revenue from wrapping the buses.
Were they doing full laps?
Yeah, because the
Yeah.
companies that own and manage apartment buildings for students want to advertise like crazy, and it's a remarkable, easy revenue source.
Yeah. I agree, I know that you can make a lot of money on that.
Yeah.
So just to make sure I got my notes down correctly, so Lawrence Transit does not do this because it's not worth the revenue, or has it been decided in the
I
past?
don't know.
I don't know if I got a conclusion.
I have no idea.
I don't know,
Yeah.
I mean,
But that
everything
doesn't
I'm
mean
saying
that
is
that's
just
what we have to
what I've
hold
heard
to.
secondhand, so I can't tell you for sure
Okay.
exactly why.
Because I recall Bob saying it almost sounded like he was concerned about aesthetics. I'm like,
I
yeah.
think that was part of the conversation
But also,
too.
it's like, I mean, try telling the taxpayers that we're leaving money on the table and we
Yeah.
could maybe be earning something. I feel like
I
that
mean, it
wouldn't
might
go
be
down
something
very well.
that we want.
I may have been misinformed, but I thought there was some regulatory thing where we have to have certain amounts of space for information on the bus. We have to identify the bus in a certain way, and in order to maintain all the various funding. That's the way I thought it was explained to me at some point. Now, that could not be completely accurate, but that was the impression I got. So,
I think it was just kind of a choice. I don't think
Yeah,
there was any.
it might be worthwhile when the new transit
Yeah.
manager comes on to revisit that discussion, because
Yeah.
$400,000 is not chump change.
I wouldn't be opposed to
for
it,
us.
you know what I mean? I'm not talking
Brand new
against
bus.
it.
That can just like frequency at all.
That's intake, that's not expense to Rapid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that, well, maybe we can table that discussion for the new manager.
Yeah, here you go. Here's another thing for you.
Yeah, just to put your,
Why not? New manager is gonna be making decisions, they should have as many decisions as possible if we have that opportunity to give it to them.
well, I seem to recall it was city too. I
I
don't,
think it was city commission that
yeah, city commission.
at some point
I-
decided against it, but it may have been years ago, I
But
don't
we've
know.
had probably a couple of changes since then,
Yeah.
so. All right, so anything else before, yes,
I have something else.
sorry.
This would probably be under the category of marketing communications, but I feel like one of my strengths on the board is looking at things from an education perspective. And to me, I've been kind of checking out in the junior highs, or I'm sorry, they're not junior highs anymore.
Middle school?
The middle schools, and like fifth graders transitioning to the middle schools, that it's not a matter of marketing, it's a matter of educating the kids to how to ride the bus, because as they go from elementary schools into middle schools, then, you know, schools are farther away, but the school bus service only is available to them if they are far enough from the school.
2 points.
So there's a lot of people in between who drive their kids to school and I live a block from the school and I know what the traffic problem is that's created by that. And so I'd like to review what kind of materials we have on hand for educating kids at that age. And I'd be happy to help us, if we don't have a curriculum for, you know, a request from the middle school to come out, and if we don't have a curriculum that's just ready to go, I'd be happy to help get that.
A curriculum, what do you mean?
Well, when you go to a school, you're expected to train kids,
You mean something that the teachers should be providing?
or
for
you or
kids?
me or anybody, yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean, we've
how would you
certainly
approach it?
contacted all the schools, and we have had teachers say that, you know, they'd like us to come in and talk to their students, but.
And so what do we
you know.
have that's ready to go, so that that's done in a,
Well, we
Yeah.
talk to the high schools mostly, you know, we haven't done a lot at the middle schools.
High schools.
The
have
high
a
schools
lot of-
mostly is
a
what
lot of
we've done.
activity.
We do the how to ride presentation and that sort of thing, we come in and.
so I would like to put it on the agenda that we would take a look at what we do with the high schools and just kind of review, what is the, I'm gonna call it lesson or the package, because it's a matter of really educating them how to do it rather than to market it.
I'll,
Or educating their
I'll present
parents as to why you can be trusted, why
So-
the system will work for those students.
So I've, having the kids are high school and getting ready to go to junior high, I've taught my kids how to ride the bus as a parent. And have communicated with some of their teachers and other students. And I have to say that what little I have seen, at the high school level, there's stuff there. There's room to do something in the middle school level. One of the thing you really need to target though is really the parents at that middle school age, because a lot of those parents, they don't
Parent association.
trust their parent associations. A lot of them, they don't know, they're not experienced bus riders themselves, so they don't have the trust there. They don't know if they can trust their kid to do that. And so that's gonna be a kind of a tough one to tackle at that age. I'm not saying don't do it, but have the parents in mind at the middle school level, if you're gonna approach that.
I know full well, I was a junior high, I was a middle school teacher for 22 years. I know it's the parents that you've got to work with. But that is a potential that I don't think we've tapped into completely. Just having the passes available isn't the whole picture. We've got to do, and when a school wants to enable their kids to ride the bus, you gotta have the pamphlets or the fact sheet or
The website,
whatever
the app.
to give the parents confidence that it'll work. So, I spent an hour this afternoon and some time on Thursday again, tutoring some kids as to how to ride the bus because their family situation requires it. So, just occurred to me.
I've seen a lot of really cool programs presented where you have like high school mentor programs where it's an ambassador program around bus education and stuff, like either biking or ped, these alternative modes than a car. To do some of that some communities have been very successful with doing that sort of programming with high school classes to basically create ride ambassadors for their younger students. So I think there's a lot of potential there.
I love this idea. I've got to get my kids though.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask for it on the agenda sometime in the near future.
Well, on my way here, I work on 31st Street and I went Louisiana and it took me quite a while because of buses picking up all the middle schoolers. And it was city buses that they were waiting on.
Yeah.
So there was a whole crowd of them. I would probably.
And there's certain times of day where
Yeah.
Route 6 around Free State High School gets very busy and there's a lot of commotion and activity. It's kind of to be expected, but that does get used quite heavily by students.
This was the middle school.
Yeah. So, and then when I go to work in the mornings, bus 1, I see junior high kids getting on bus 1 and getting off at 11 Mass to go to Central. I don't see a lot of them, but I see, a few pretty consistently. So it's being used.
If you know a way to get past the principals, because we've tried contacting the schools and contacting the principals, and then they're kind of like,
I think PTA's.
I am
would go.
exploring
PTA.
that right now.
Yeah.
And I did find by talking to the social worker at West, and I'm gonna prime her, and then she's gonna call you
Okay,
and
be
request
great. I'd
something.
love to hear, I'd love to hear from the
Yeah.
schools. That would be great.
Yeah.
We would love to get into the schools more. But they are a little tough to get into is the problem.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, I
Yeah.
Phyllis has a mission.
Yeah.
I noticed a couple of small things that I just wanted to make sure whoever would be in charge of this just is aware of. They're on the Guide to Ride this year. They had Martin Luther King Day marked as no service.
Yeah.
Correct.
That was a
And so,
mistake.
so
Yeah.
if we want to kind of check ourselves for that next year. I
will.
didn't know if there was a certain, I can't
We
remember.
made that note already.
Okay, good. Also, I looked at the city website, just to make sure I was gonna go to the right place for the meeting, which I assumed I would. Under the very first things you see on there, it says a 2021 date and a 3:10 start time. So
Yeah, that's
if
right.
we could correct that.
Yeah, it says
Yeah.
3:10 for this
And-
current meeting, so I had to look at the agenda just to make sure. I was like, it's
And
really
the
not
year is
here.
2021, so.
Like on the city event calendar?
On the
Yeah.
city, if you go to the City of Lawrence Public Transit Advisory Committee, and the first thing
Okay.
that comes up under the Public Transit Advisory Committee, it gives a 2021 date, and it gives 3:10 as the start time, so.
It's
Which
also on the
advisory
events
board?
calendar.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say on the events
just-
calendar.
You know,
Yeah.
little
Yeah,
things
so
I
we can
noticed.
fix that.
That's good feedback.
You can always email us too or call. We can fix
Yeah.
those things real immediately. You know, I'm not saying
Yeah.
do it today, like tell us, but
It was kind of on my radar, but I've
3:10,
I've been kind of personally busy lately.
yeah, I get it.
It's a perfect time.
Yeah, if you
good.
guys see anything that, you know, because like this is a new system for us, you know, computer system we're working on, so we're not perfect at it yet. There might be some issues and some mistakes, but let us know if you see anything, for sure.
Is there a procedure for reporting bus drivers, like for speeding? Is that just something that gets phoned in or turned in?
Yeah, normally we just have people call into our customer service hotline and they will turn that into our contractor. And they'll talk,
Okay.
they'll look, they have ways of looking to see if the
There's
driver
GPS on all the
was-
buses, so we can tell.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
they
closely
can tell
monitored.
that, yeah.
Yeah, I
If you get complaints and you call and you
one,
say, "Oh my gosh, they were
one blew
going
by me the other day, I was
north."
really
And this one's
surprised.
the emergency responder, the 911 bus.
Yes,
911, yeah.
I asked that same
I
question. Oh,
think
we
this
need
is probably being addressed, but I noticed it was right after the first of the year, and some new drivers in the downtown transfer point. They're not supposed to leave before 5 after the hour, most of those routes. And there was older drivers, more experienced drivers having to remind, and it was people were missing transfers. And it was pretty,
Oh.
I was noticing it quite a bit. I haven't noticed as much lately, but if you're getting calls about that, it just might be a reminder thing. That's a pretty important transfer point. They cannot leave early.
A lot of times they have supervisors down there,
Yeah, you do.
kind of monitoring that, so,
I know that a couple
Yeah.
times say, hey, stop, hold on, you left too early, hold on, this person's running for you. And if it just happened once, I wouldn't say anything, but it happened quite a few times early in the year, so
boy.
just
wow.
might just check up on it and make sure it looks like it's being addressed though, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other concerns?
Really good discussion. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. We had a really good turnout. March 9th, I imagine we will not cancel that since we will have
Yes.
a lot to discuss.
I'll go ahead and put it on my work calendar.
Yeah,
And
so-
isn't that spring break week?
Yep,
Yeah, okay.
it is. So, thank you again, and we'll close the meeting.